Okay, everyone. I'm just going to give folks a few more minutes. I'm waiting for us to reach quorum for the committee. Okay. All right. So we should now have quorum. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Maria. And sorry, Chanel, the recording is okay to go?
Yes, you're all set.
All right. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to now what is our May 6th meeting, starting at 7:03 p.m. Tonight, I put on our agenda two specific items, one dealing with the Rank Guidelines Board, and the second more so referring back to our previous resolution that passed back in February for the Fort Washington Avenue Armory resolution. Tonight, we'll be discussing both items, specifically referring back to what was our previous resolution that was passed in 2020 for the Rank Guidelines Board, in addition to then discussing the potential of what we'll be doing with the previous resolution passed in February for the Fort Washington Avenue Armory. Last we discussed in our previous meeting, we were supposed to be reviewing and considering pretty much switching this over into what would be two resolutions, but that will continue once we get to the second item there. To start us off, I'd just like to make sure that I introduce everyone from the committee. I'll start off. This is Ariel Miranda here, Chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. This is Angel Vasquez, member of the committee and resident of the southern end of Community Board 12 in Washington Heights.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Marielle Ali here, Assistant Chair for the committee.
I'll jump in. Bruce Robertson, Southern Washington Heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Hi, everyone. This is Etta Santiago, also a member of the committee.
Thank you. And to our fellow community board members, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Sally Fisher. I'm a member of Health and Environment, so I'm actually on that call as well. I just have some questions for when you get to the Armory. So I think I asked some of them during the general meeting, but I've got a couple more.
Okay.
930, 2,007,000.
Okay. And I also want to introduce our fellow public members.
Well, let me jump in. I'm Marshall Vanderpool. I'm public member of the committee. I'm first vice president of Dyckman Resident Association, New York City Housing Authority.
Thank you, Marshall. Okay. So I guess that should be everyone then from our committees and fellow board members. Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to just sharing my screen so that I can essentially, Chanel, would you be able to enable me for sharing screen? I appear to be disabled at the moment. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so let me go ahead and open first. So this was our previous resolution passed in 2020, kind of highlighting where the proposed rent increases were at that time from the vote that was preliminary on May 7th. The Rent Guidelines Board had proposed a 0% increase for a 1-year renewal lease and also a 1% increase for a 2-year lease. As we know from what came about, this actually stuck. And so it wasn't a change from this proposed vote. We had included at that time, because there was so much that was really in flux, really a focus on the 2020 income and affordability study that was really examining what the labor force looked like, how the unemployment rate had been changing, really as much as we possibly could, because this was very much so not as well recorded as we may have liked. And we even took some information that was also proposed or put forward by the 2020 income and affordability study that really sought information from the Federal Reserve, as well as the United States Department of Labor. And additional information that we might have found as well throughout the New York State's Department of Labor website. And so you can tell we can also just make note of specifically accommodation and food services, which were hit the hardest. And we specifically made clear what were the claims at that point, specifically looking over what the Federal Reserve's own reports were talking about with regards to businesses being hit within hospitality and retail trade. And then also jumping into previous information that we had been looking over that dealt with overcrowding really within some renting households, in addition to information that we found from the New York University Furman Center that really gauged what unemployment looked like prior and how pretty much really up to the pandemic, things had been looking beforehand. And I'll just make note, of course, that, you know, that whereas there at the very top of the page here is making note of really how New York City stands in comparison with that of our community. Our community has historically had a higher level of unemployment. And so we wanted to make sure that was included in our resolution, along with some information that we could also follow up with regarding really how much we're severely over rent burdened and that which were just regularly rent burdened within the community district as well. So, I mean, there's quite a bit of additional information that we took from years past, and also reports that were in sync with some of our city agencies. I just want to make sure that we noted this for tonight in our discussion of what would be now our 2021 updated kind of resolution that goes before the Rent Guidelines Board. So switching over to what's just really been a drafting that I've put together, I just want to point out, so I updated really what were some of the top lines here, and just putting the date in for yesterday, really, which was when they took the preliminary vote for this year's essential changes in the rent increases, and included what was also the proposed rates for both the 1-year and the 2-year leases, as were made clear yesterday. I also already began to look into the 2021 income and affordability study that they also released, which also cited really what was a loss of jobs throughout the entire 2020 year, which apparently was said to be an 11.1 decrease from what was 2019's. I also want to make note that the unemployment rate rose what was for the first time in 8 years to a 12.3 across the entire city, from that which was considered a historic low of 3.9. And what was also made clear in the report was that this was actually what was the highest level in the last 45 years. So just make also an additional note, I'll say out loud, this is how long the unemployment rate has been recorded within New York City. So really, this is like the largest increase that's been even capable of being documented across New York City's history for an unemployment rate. And I also made note that within the report, they were mentioning that within the 52-week periods that they're documenting as March 14th of 2020 to March 6th of 2021, the total number of initial unemployment claims was up by 647%. The specific number that they gave was 2,133,298 claims in New York City, which was as compared to the same period in the prior year. And also, according to was a recent report from the New School that was separate from the Rent Guidelines Board, but the Rent Guidelines Board wanted to make a part of its 2021 income and affordability study, was it's just a note about the estimation of an underemployment rate, specifically looking at how many people have been out of the workforce for what could be considered at least 6 months, or have been trying to seek employment, but haven't been able to. And the rate that they've estimated is already about a quarter. So a quarter of individuals that have been essentially trying to work in New York City as of December of 2020. In addition, it also makes note that within the United States Census Bureau's own work, it's now integrated what is considered a household pulse survey. And this is supposed to be conducted weekly throughout the year of 2020, moving into 2021. What they found was that between March 17th and 29th of this year, 2021, 12.7% of renter households in the New York metro area were considered housing insecure. For the specific terminology they give, this means either not being current on their rent or being paid up to date, or having slight or no confidence that their household could essentially pay next month's rent on time. I also want to make note that within that report, they're also stating that in 2020, although we had the vote, as we just mentioned, to have 0% increases on a 1-year lease, as well as then what was a 1% increase on a 2-year lease, the average rental cost rose 2% in the New York City area versus an overall increase in what's even the consumer price index of 1.7%, which really typically the Federal Bureau, the Federal Reserve will monitor. And that just takes into account really what are the increases in costs overall. So you're talking about the rental costs increasing even more than pretty much every single product that you're finding across our markets increasing throughout the year of 2020. In addition, they're taking information from what is the New York City Comptroller's report, the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget, in addition to the Independent Budget Office of the City of New York, the three of which they make their own projections and forecasts for really what our economic conditions are looking like across New York City. But they're all essentially forecasting what's going to be a difficult return. In the Comptroller's report specifically, they're forecasting that New York City employment is expected to fully rebound to pre-pandemic rates until the spring and summer of 2022. So, you know, there is essentially a desire, and of course, probably a rebounding that's going to be occurring throughout this time, but we will not be essentially reaching those rates until that very time period, at least according to the Comptroller's forecasting. The Mayor's Office of Management and Budget, their forecasting employment is projected to remain below the prior 2019 peak until 2023. And really the Independent Budget Office, they have a little bit more of a kind of, I guess I would consider a little bit more of a bleak picture, saying that by the end of 2025, the unemployment rate is supposed to be roughly about 7.1%, which would still be roughly double what the unemployment rate was prior to the pandemic. Just also add additional context here, even 5 years after the 2008 financial crisis, this was where the rate was expected to be. So it's essentially somewhat a little bit more assuring in the sense that it's supposed to be similar, but given what we're expecting even 5 years after, it's still going to be difficult, right? So this means that we're going to have a very long period of time before we're expecting really employment, potentially wages to even increase for a lot of families. I will say though that throughout the report, they do make clear that for certain high wage earners, it did see levels of increases that were assuring, but for many individuals that are considered either working class or potentially low income wage earners, their wages decreased in very unique ways across sectors. So that's just something to also think about when reviewing this kind of economic forecast. And I also just want to make note that when we're talking about the sectors, really what I'll mention is referring back to accommodation and food services, as well as the arts, entertainment, and recreation industries. As we mentioned in the past resolution, these were the two very unique sectors that we were personally interested in looking at because of what was happening to their industries. At that time, it was a very bleak picture. And I think it's also making clear here that really within those two individual industries, we're still seeing this. Total wages decreased in real terms by 62.8% and 40.9% respectively for each of the two. The average employment in the two aforementioned industries also fell by 59.3% and 52.3% as well. So this is kind of the updates as to where things are now with the two industries. What I have below, I've pretty much kept because I felt like these are still very important, I guess, measures that we should still be looking back to, because what's also happened is that given everything right now, especially with our unemployment rate, we still have to refer back to what's going to be happening across the entire city. The rates that we'll be wanting to probably know about what's happening, like let's say within CD12, it's not going to be available to us. And I can imagine that's probably going to take some time before we might get another report from the New York University Furman Center that kind of lays this out. But it's just important to know that we have historically just had that, again, higher rate of unemployment, but also a much more difficult time getting people, to have jobs here in our district. And it goes the same thing for the New York City planning information. I've really just updated these two numbers here, 43% and 28.3%, so that it's focused on what was the last year's recorded for these two, which was 2018. I think in the previous year, we had information that was specific to 2017, and so I just wanted to make sure those were updated here. Otherwise, this information below has all pretty much been kept similar. I'm happy to just slowly scroll through them unless anyone has any questions about the additional whereases that were left below. So that's pretty much keeping things where they were from just the whereases. For the resolved, I just really updated to change this to 2021 now. But I want to, of course, get everyone's perspective. So I will switch back over to chat and I'll stop sharing here. Okay. So Aisha, would you like to say anything about the resolution?
Yeah, I wanted to, honestly, I was parking, I'm on the road right now. So I was trying to hear what you said while I was getting myself situated. Did you say that the unemployment for our district has doubled, or was that in relation to the city?
Oh, I said it was historically like roughly about double that of the city's rate.
Oh, okay. Okay, and could you, I have my glasses on, but the font is really small. Can you read the resolved?
Yes. Let me switch back. Let's see, share screen. Yeah, so the resolve is really the same as last year's. Community Board 12 of Manhattan strongly urges the New York City Rent Guidelines Board to not grant any rent increases for any rent regulated apartment for all 1- and 2-year renewal leases commencing October 1st of 2021.
Okay, and so I know I saw reports stating that I think there was something like 600,000 job losses. Do we have any idea? Is it stated in here what the city expects the impact to be as far as job losses? And then
Yeah.
would it go to say that we could expect to be hit disproportionately because we have a history of being double the city?
Yeah, so in the earlier whereases here, I included that the city of New York lost an average of 516,000 jobs in 2020, which was an 11.1% decrease.
Mhm.
And I also noted here that the average annual unemployment rate rose for the first time in 8 years to 12.3%. And then I think you were saying just to make the comparison. So I guess the comparison, just because I don't know the specific unemployment rate here, I wanted to just continue keeping this whereas here about the New York University Furman Center's own reports that was just highlighting that CD12 unemployment rate is typically just higher, and kind of just giving that rate there based on the 2017 rates alone.
Okay. So I know advocacy agencies over time have gone as far as requesting a rollback. And I know that on the board, we've consistently taken the positions that we believe a freeze is necessary. And, we've gotten those freezes of various years over time. What are your thoughts in regard to a possible rollback, especially considering if we had already in the housing arena considered that would make sense with now having this pandemic upon us? I would imagine there's even more justification to ask for a rollback. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the roles that advocates want to play, of course, to ask for that, where it's going to potentially be possible. I know you're asking more so about our senses, but I generally don't think it's going to be possible to ask for a rollback, because a lot of landlords have also made clear that they're not necessarily doing well right now, and have also had to decrease their rents depending on the community. It's varied quite a bit. So I think it makes it much more difficult to ask for the rollback right now, given that kind of data. And also just note the 2021 income and expense report. It's not. I will just note, like, it's not as updated as I quite frankly wanted it to be. But they try to make note that within that report, it couldn't be just because it's really not been capable of assessing how much their own expenses has been affected as a result of the pandemic. And so that's kind of where it's also been difficult for the New York City Rent Guidelines Board to gauge what it's going to look like on the owner side as well. So that's kind of just where things have been with at least the reporting.
Can I ask a question, clarifying question?
Yeah.
When it's my first time engaging in this resolution, when we talk about rollback, what does that mean in relation to what is a freeze versus a rollback versus a 0% increase? If you could just explain those.
So the rollback would be asking for rents to, across the entire Rent Guidelines Board's jurisdiction, essentially go back like a certain percentage. And then the increases that we're looking at have historically been, probably doing a 1% or 2%, which is really just stuck throughout the past few years.
Okay.
The freezing would essentially allow us to continue what we've asked for a few times, having a 0% increase on the rents. Normally, this has mainly been only for a 1-year lease that's offered. Typically, the 2-year leases, those are normally the ones that might have like a small increase on as a result. But yeah, so that's normally just what it will be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let me just stop sharing so I can see everyone. Did any of the fellow committee members have additional thoughts on this? Otherwise,
my thoughts is that I think it's fair to keep it at a 0%, considering the economic situation that our district in particular is still under. I wouldn't say that we have completely recovered from the pandemic yet. And so I agree with calling for at least a 0%, calling for a 0% on both 1 and 2 year leases as it's drafted. Those are my 2 cents.
So if fellow committee members don't have additional thoughts here, I'll switch over then to some of the public members. I think I see a hand raised. Michael?
I was just trying to see if you guys could hear me before I was on, before the meeting started. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any comment on this section of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. So yeah, I guess then the question is, do committee members feel comfortable with the resolution, kind of keeping that very same language that we've had in the previous years?
Yes, for me.
Okay.
Me too, Bruce.
Okay.
Hi, this is Etta. I also agree with the resolution. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for this point, I will just, sorry, I'm trying to open back up my screen.
So I just want to jump back in here and say, so I'm going to agree with this resolution as far as the freeze is concerned. However, I do think, and I've stated this last year when the pandemic first started, that a conversation about possibly restabilizing or putting forward a new rent stabilization guidelines that would bring market rate apartments back into the fray, or into the fray even for the first time for some establishments, the way that it was done years ago, that created the rent guidelines board's responsibilities in the first place. That we, bring more apartments into the fold, because we have only begun to see the impacts. We already knew that we were in a housing crisis before this pandemic, and we can see how homelessness is rising. We talk in this resolution about the impact of unemployment specifically on our district, and I think that would be a good conversation to have about the potential to do that. I've talked to some other people in government as well who agree that that is a good stance to take. But of course, that would be for another time. But I just wanted to put that on the table while we're discussing this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a conversation for sure with 2021 looming around. But with regards to this resolution, I think right now it's just because of how things have really been run this past year and how things have been looking across really the entire city, that makes it much more difficult to try and get a better understanding of where everyone has been. Because I do understand what they're saying about the expense report, that it's not even really measurable at this point. I think the most that they really drew from was Con Edison, because that's just across the entire state that they're able to measure that. But yeah, it's been difficult because it varies very much so depending on the landlord, and also each individual unit, quite frankly. It's not been as typical, I think, for a lot of landlords this past year. So I guess with that, out of pretty much just practice here, I'll just motion to pass this resolution. Can I get a second?
I will second.
Second.
Is there any objection?
No.
Okay, so hearing no objection, we won't need to be voting on this. This is referred to as being passed unanimously by the committee. So I'll go ahead and just copy this, and I'll be sending it. Actually, I'll just do it now. Okay, yeah. And I'll be sending it to everyone after then the meeting. Close this actually as well now. Yeah. So then with our second matter before us, I'll move along then to the Fort Washington Avenue Armory resolution. I sent over the previous copy to the committee members. So if you want to pull it up as well, but I have it here on the screen. When we met in our past meeting during the old business section, I was discussing alongside some of the fellow committee members really what's come before us and the desire to maybe potentially have this become two resolutions separating the matter of what is the entire facility of the Fort Washington Avenue Armory with that of the concerns that have been raised by Growth and Development Services. And I think that last time we spoke, there was still that desire to have those two being separated from one another. Are committee members still on board with trying to do this as two individual items, or what is everyone's thinking right now? And I'll just stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone's hands here. Sally?
Hi, Ariel, if you don't mind, general practice, I mean, not even general practice, when we were meeting in person, it would be easier to know who's on the committee, because you would basically look at the sign-in sheet when you come in and you know what changes have been made to the committee. I know that reappointments were happening. I know that at times people get shuffled around. We don't really get informed of who's on or off the committee. Can you read the current roster for the Housing and Human Services Committee so that we know who?
Yeah, there hasn't been any changes. It's still myself, you, Angel, Ada, Bruce, I think I said Mariel,
Eda,
yeah, Ada is still on. So it's now 6 of us. Richard Allman has come off the committee, and then Miriam is no longer on the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Ariel, this is Sally. I had to go somewhere where I wasn't heard. So could I just give you my questions for GDS? Because I've got to get back to the Health and Environment meeting.
Yeah, sorry. Yes.
If you can just make sure these are answered. Because I still don't, to be honest, although I've heard the presentation, I still don't have a clear idea of what they do. So what I would like is just some data, the number of youth served by program, the number of staff by program, what the current operation is. Are they operating anywhere? I think that are they still at IS 52? What are their operating hours then and now? When they were at the Armory, what were their operating hours? And I'd like that by season, because I know in the summer, a number of kids come because they're summer youth employment program attendees. And I don't know how that number is in the 3 other seasons. So if you could just, which I think is important, because I don't think I'm alone in not really understanding what the utilization was, what the current staffing is, where they're currently operating. But if you could get those questions answered, and I will listen to the tape afterwards. I think those, if depending on what happens with the resolution tonight, because we're going to be voting on it at the next community board meeting. I would also just like to express my opinion that I agree with taking GDS out. There can be a separate resolution, but essentially this is Armory operations. And I think, and I could be wrong, I think the GDS Armory thing is a legal matter now. And I don't think it's the business of Community Board 12 to be fighting a legal battle. I don't think that's our charter. Anyway, those are my questions. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go back to Health and Environment.
Sorry, Sally, before you leave, is it possible you can send me those specific questions? I'm sorry, you had a lot of questions there.
I'm trying to figure out how to send them to you. I can repeat them really quickly.
Just please email me them and I can send them to GDS.
Okay. Well, I want them answered on the record tonight.
Well, I don't know if they're present. So, I mean, I can,
I think
sorry, Dr. Gary, yeah. I mean,
Dr. Gary is here.
Dr. Gary, I'll unmute you right now. Do you want to just try and answer if you haven't?
No, I don't want to answer that because that's the wrong question. The question
Well,
is why was GDS wrongfully evicted and why has Community Board 12 done nothing about it?
Okay, first of all, we are not lawyers. I think this is a legal matter, but the second thing is,
It's not a legal
until I
matter with the New York
understand,
City.
until
I
I
jump in here?
understand, please don't interrupt me. Until I understand what the business of GDS is, I can't answer those questions. So you're running this company. I want to know what the utilization was at the Armory. I want to know what the operation was then, what the operation is now. You're asking us to intercede on your behalf, and I don't understand what your business is. I don't know how many employees you have. That's another question I have. I understood that you were at Inwood Community Services. I'm not sure if that's true. I understood that you were at IS 52. I don't know if that's true. I just want to know, I just want the facts. You're running a company. I want to know what that company is. Regardless of how I feel
know
about
why we
whether or
were
not you should,
evicted?
wait. Regardless of whether I know, whether I feel that it should or should not be part of that resolution, I could never answer that question because I'm blind to what GDS does. And I just want some more data on the current operation and what it was when you were at the Armory. I think those are fair questions.
Sure, I have submitted all those answers.
If you could repeat them tonight, because I'm asking about current operations. Are there employees? I wanted data by program, how many people you serve.
Okay, so it doesn't sound as if there's the opportunity to get that right now. If they're going to be a passing of that information, I will let folks know, but I'm happy to just move on from this point. Thank you so much, Sally.
Can I answer some of her questions?
That would be
Actually,
great.
I raised my
I'm
hand.
sorry, yeah, Aisha's next.
So I raised my hand to speak to what Sally is asking. So first, I want to say there has been a lot of information put forward from Growth and Development Services over the years, over this time that this has been reviewed. But first, I agree with Gary that the question is questionable. Here's why, and it's no disrespect to you, Sally, but Gary or Growth Development Services was evicted, right? What has been floated in this conversation is, well, like same kind of questions that Sally is saying, but the thing is there was no requirement ever stated to Growth and Development Services that it had to operate in any kind of specific way. That is certainly something that the Department of Homeless Services, which had purview and should have been operating the governance of the building, could have done at any point in time. They did not do that, right? Further, the Armory Foundation over time has been specifically asked from beginning years ago when this process first started to answer those same questions and not answer them. Ariel Miranda, running this meeting just recently, last month, reiterated again for the umpteenth time, where is the information from the Armory Foundation for those same questions, right? Which is part of the issue to begin with, right? That originally, and even according to their own admission, until we began to put pressure on the Armory Foundation, many of the youth that were being served were not from the community. Growth and Development Services primarily served youth from the community
And all I
at
want to
that
know
point.
is,
And I get what you're saying, Sally, but yeah,
okay,
that's the truth.
I've been coming to community board meetings for years, even before I was a community board member. I still don't understand in terms of utilization, what the utilization was at the Armory before they left the Armory. And I don't understand what it is now. So I hear a lot of discussion about, well, we have this program or this program was important to me, which I fully believe. I just want to know what we're talking about in terms of numbers. I'm a data person.
Okay,
And
so
so what I want is the data. I
you-
don't know the answers from the Armory,
Okay,
but there are two
right.
sides to this story.
Folks.
I both.
All right, let's pause for a moment. So I think what we're just trying to get at right now is what we want to do for resolution. I think from what we've already have discussed, It sounds like everyone wants to put these two items on two separate resolutions. All right, I don't want to try and rehash how everyone feels about GDS, how everyone feels about another organization. Just want to get an answer.
I would agree to separate them, though. I'm not on the committee.
Okay. Does any other committee members have thoughts on these?
So if we separated them, just so I can get clarification, one would be in relation to the eviction of GDS from the property. That would be one, right?
So one would be specific to the resolve that we asked for last time. It's the, let me just pull it down so I can make sure I'm referring to it correctly. The last, be it resolved.
Sally, could you mute yourself? We can't hear anything because of the background noise.
The last resolve, be it further resolved, Community Board 12M calls upon the Department of Homeless Services in conjunction with any related agencies to reinstate growth and development services into the original space at the Fort Washington Avenue Armory so as to make right the undue disturbance and services laid upon our youth seeking mental health services. It would essentially be removing that resolve and putting it into a different resolution, along with some of the whereases that we also had included to try and make really clear the story of I would say the whereas that we needed to try and include what's happened with GDS and the Armory. Does that make sense there?
Yeah.
And so the other two resolves that we had that had to deal with really the oversight would be kept on that resolution.
So one is about the oversight of the Armory Foundation as the operating entity in the building, and then a separate resolution just on the eviction of GDS and calling on the Department of Homeless Services to reinstate them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do think that these are two separate issues. And I do think that we should treat them as two separate resolutions.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull up what could be now new, just Google Doc here. We're just going to copy and paste what was the February resolution. And I think we can just separate the two items there. And I'm just going to share it with all committee members as I did with the RGB resolution.
You're sharing this via email?
It's going to go through like Google, pretty much the same way as the other one. Yeah.
So if I could, I just want to reiterate, I know many people were not present last month. We didn't have quorum. We couldn't move forward on this matter. Part of the issue that I was bringing up, so to begin with, I originally suggested that this be two resolutions because I saw this coming. It is a lot. It's a complicated situation. It's been going on for years. There's a lot that has taken place, and there's quite a bit of nuance to the whole situation and a lot of stakeholders. That being said, one of the things that I talked about last month was the second resolution, which is to suggest task force be created to have oversight over the situation, in my opinion, doesn't go far enough. It is kicking the can down the road and honestly putting it back in the hands of the decision makers that have already been at the table in regards to who they appoint and therefore what resolutions come about because of this. And I think that as a community, not just as a community board, but as a community, we could take the steps of making the suggestions about what would make sense in this space for all the spaces that exist within the building and in regards to governance. So I would like to suggest that we include in that there be a public hearing about what this building should be doing for our community differently than already has been done, but certainly the potential of what could be done. There are many models for what buildings like this do in various communities around the country, but certainly within our city that we can look to model what happens in this building after, but definitely to correct the issues that have taken place with lack of oversight, with improper governance, with people really just completely looking away, including the ways in which many of us have tried to advocate in this situation for proper governance for years. This could have been fixed 7 years ago, were it not for the agendas of many and the intention to suppress this conversation about what's happening in that building, which now we all agree has been problematic. So in my opinion, Community Board 12 just saying, hey, create a group that's going to deal with it is kicking the can down the road, when we can say create a group that is going to work on implementing a vision of what better functionality at the Fort Washington Armory could be. I would like to see that represented in the resolution. And thinking of, because I know that it's a dense resolution, we've gone through a lot of work to get it to this point. Very thankful to see this happening, but if we simply have that Community Board 12 is going to hold a public hearing about what a better model could look like, and we bring in experts, whether they be experts from the city, whether they be experts from institutions that are knowledgeable about how better outcomes can be yielded by a facility such as this, about experts that have knowledge about appropriate systems that can be implemented to have better oversight, that if we bring them to the table and we have that discussion and we have the community that should always have the opportunity to have this discussion had in the light of day and not in back offices and in emails and on phone calls,
Aisha,
which is not
let's
public
try.
meeting, I think that would be best.
Let's try. Okay, so Mariel, can you keep the time?
Yes, I could do that.
Go back to.
I was pretty much done, but that's my point.
Okay. All right. So.
Yes, just give me one moment, but yes, go ahead.
Okay. So just taking that into account, it sounds like just having a note being, or rather a new resolve being input after the first, calling for a public town hall meeting in C12. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
I see that the resolution also does call for the New York City Council to have a hearing over it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking for 2 hearings.
Well, the New York City Council has purview. In fact, the representatives of the council, our councilmen themselves, should certainly have had purview. But this, I also see this building as not just being ours. It's a city building, and in the language of the genesis of this space, it mentions that it's supposed to be a city facility, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just our councilmen, but councilmen from around the city that should be weighing in. That's a standard. But because the facility sits in our district, then certainly we, Community Board 12, have a voice in what better governance could be. And so it is our responsibility, in my opinion, to push forward a resolution that speaks to the council before they hold any hearings about what our expectations could and should be.
Okay, so yes, I'll be happy to just put in the resolve. Before then, Community Board 12 has a hearing of its own.
Ariela, read 2 minutes per speaker.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are we doing 2 minutes?
Yeah, we're gonna do 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to actually just call whoever has their hands raised, and I'm just going to continue typing here.
Sure. Sally, is that a old hand or a new hand? Maybe Sally's gone to the other meeting.
Okay.
Sally? Okay, yeah. Okay, so with I don't see anyone else from the committee. Just double checking now. Okay. Oh, okay. Ariel, do you want me to do the committee members first, and then we can pass it over to the participants?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, Angel, over to you.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused as to where we are in the process at the moment. Are we actively trying to draft the two resolutions? What, I guess I want clarity as to where we are right now in this moment.
Yeah. And it sounds more so specific to what we have. So I'm going to be pulling the information on GDS into the second document that was also just created so that we can essentially separate the two.
Okay. So we are drafting, basically we are drafting two resos at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ariel. If you could just lower your hand so I can keep track.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I no longer see anyone else from the committee. Michael, it looks like you've had your hand up. You also have 2 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you. When this subject first came up, when Ariel was chair, some of you, at least Ariel, I think you're going to remember, I told you, you're in for it. They're going to be coming after you, Ariel. And there's going to be a lot of pressure put on you. There's going to be a target on you. You'll be getting phone calls. And I'm not going to ask you to, to tell us if that's true or not. But if it's not true, go ahead and tell me I'm wrong. If it is true, you can just not say anything. But this isn't the first time. The joint meeting of two committees, your committee and the youth and committee, passed a unanimous resolution back in October 2014. And at the end of the meeting, the chair of one of those committees told Aisha, this isn't going to general. That's how much of a stranglehold they had even back then on this community board. They don't have to have a stranglehold on the whole board, just certain people, influential people, such as the chair and whatnot. This has got to stop, okay? Aisha took on this, and what did they do? Not only did they remove her from the chair position, they took her off of the committee and deliberately put her on another committee that meets at the same time, so she wouldn't even be able to come to these meetings. Right after that 2014 thing, all of a sudden, somebody who works for the Armory got on this community board. And they also have a habit of inviting all of our former chairs to become members of the Army Board Foundation, whether it's Maria Luna, whether it's Shah Ali, whether it's the lady who passed away recently. I'm sorry, her name escapes me. But they deal in influence, and it's all about the money. It's not that they hate our community or hate minority people. They just want to make the money, and they don't want people like Gary in there who are going to blow the whistle on them. And I just want to take another 20 seconds to answer one of Sally's questions. If you guys want to break up these two resolutions, that's up to you. You're the ones whose names are on it. You got to stand behind it. First of all, the legal thing between GDS and the Army Foundation does not have to do with the oversight. It has to do with the Army Foundation not paying taxes on unrelated business income to the tune of $1 million.
5 seconds.
Okay. And that's the legal issue. The legal issue is not Gary trying to get back in there.
Michael,
Thank you.
that's time. Thank you. I just want to be respectful to everyone and give everyone the same courtesy of the 2 minutes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I did see Zadie's hand up. Zadie, if you could Sadie, are you
No.
able to speak? Okay, just 1 minute. I'm going to give you your 2 minutes as well. Go ahead.
I just have to respectfully disagree. I mentioned this in the chat with the fact that these are two separate issues. It is a result of the oversight and the mismanagement of the building, which is what the resolution addresses in general. And that is the result as to why GDS was even allowed to be evicted in the first place due to this oversight and mismanagement. So I have to disagree that it is two separate issues. And in terms of, I guess it's a question in terms of, you know, how can we, does it not matter that GDS is an advocacy team? GDS's advocacy team, Phil Zablocki of Chairman of Advocates for Equality and Integrity, and Aisha, and GDS's advocacy team in general, spending time expressing and exposing the lack of access in this building. Does none of that matter in terms of taking GDS out of the resolution? The fact that it is mostly a result of GDS's advocacy team that really brought this issue to light and is the reason why the building services have been expanded in general. Does none of that matter in terms of taking GDS out of the resolution? That I feel, and it really is obvious based on the timing of events of when the services have expanded, that this is a result of GDS's advocacy. And I don't feel that this resolution would even have been addressed if not for that advocacy. So does that not matter? And then I guess I also had another question, since we were being questioned about, you know, the services that we are presenting. Did Glennis Aquino send over the demographics of the people serviced by the Armory Foundation as requested by you all? How many non-track students have access to all the new programs that have been initiated? Because that's really our concern. We just want a level playing field. We want all people to have access
10
to
seconds.
services and the services that we offer. That's really what it's about. It's about leveling out these disparities that have been exacerbated by the pandemic.
Thank you, Zadie. There's someone in the chat that has, and if you're done speaking, if you could just lower your hands. I don't know if Michael, maybe you're going to come back in a little bit later. Okay. I see someone here with a Galaxy S10. If you could just please state your name, and if possible, just rename yourself so that we have that information be reflected in our minutes. There's someone listed as a Galaxy S10. I'm assuming they're joining from their phone.
Oh, actually. Hello, are you there?
Okay. Akeem. Okay, great.
Hi,
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I know my time is up, but I know this is a public session. So are my questions going to be answered? Because I know in the general meeting they usually don't answer questions, but I'm just curious, in this session in the committee, are my questions being answered? Or am I just throwing them out there just to, you know, as statements? Because it was my understanding that you all actually answer questions during the committee meetings. I know that doesn't happen during general meetings, but is that not something that could be answered in regards to the demographics of the non-track students being serviced?
I mean, I'll just say, like, no, the information wasn't shared.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So I know Akeem, I believe that's you. So if you also will have 2 minutes. Do you have speaking privileges? Looks like.
I've allowed talking permitted for Galaxy S10. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, you ready? 2 minutes.
Okay, yes.
Go ahead.
So, yes, I just wanted to talk about my experience growing up in the Armory and using the Armory as a privilege. And I saw how helpful and how it helped so many people of youth growing up, especially people of color, people that lived in that area and in the surrounding areas, and to find out that what's going on with it and the fact that a lot of these services that were once available to me as a kid are not going to be available anymore to the community, and breaks my heart. I know for me personally, I was a track athlete, so I was given the privileges of not just using it as a place of competition, but also as a place for academic services as well. And I know some of my peers who weren't afforded those same opportunities, maybe because they weren't on a track team or whatever the case may be. But I see the kind of differences it had in their academic career up to that point in high school. So I do think it's very important what is going on. I think that there needs to be more people aware about it. That way the advocacy for it could be stronger. And I just want to say that, you know, this affects everybody in the community, not just young kids, but even adults, you know, who have children, grandchildren, and, you know, the violence and stuff that happens in New York, in the uptown area. It was great to have a safe haven for children to go to, just to stay out of the streets, stay out of trouble. So all in all, I just want to say that I think that what this is very resourceful. I know I would do what I can on my part to be able to spread knowledge and spread news.
10 seconds.
And I just want to thank you all for giving me the platform as well to be able to speak my mind and speak my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we now have, and if you're done with your portion, Akeem, thank you. If you could just lower your hand again, so it's just easier to keep track of. Thank you. Dr. Gary, over to you, 2 minutes. Dr. Gary? Looks like you're still muted.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Thank you to the committee for all their work to try to deal with this. I know it's been a long 5 months. It's been actually a long 20 years for me. I'll never forget the first day when I met Dr. Sander and I went to show him the video of Camp Excel. And he took me out in the hallway and he told me I'm never going to get into the building. And I said, what do you mean? He said, we can't have these kinds of kids in the building. So we ended up having a contact with Bob Scalarop and we got into the building. I never said anything about that because I always thought he was the landlord. When the Armory Foundation increased our fee, they called it rent. So for anyone to say that this is not related to GDS, what the Armory Foundation did was they increased our fee, calling it rent illegally. So the Armory Foundation, the lawyers that we recruited from pro bono lawyers, and DHS met with Alizé Beal and the city in DHS on April 23rd in 2015. DHS told Dr. Sander and with Alizé Beal there from Community Affairs Unit that from now on, this building has to be opened up to the community and GDS's therapy dog is allowed in the building and you need to pay back GDS the money that you overcharged them. So then there was the resolution. So the reason why this is so long, Angel, is because Community Board 12 has not done their job since October 20th, 2014. The resolution said to look into the oversight. Nobody knew that the Armory Foundation does not own the building. We were evicted 3 times. I want to know the answer.
10 seconds.
DHS said that there would be an RFQ for our space. I want to know, where is the RFQ for our space? And I'm requesting that Community Board 12 go and look at GDS's space that we built out for rubble. What is going on with our space? So that's a question. The question is,
time.
Okay, so I have a question. The question is, where is the RFQ?
If you could, just wrap up your question. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Where is the request for quotient that Matt Borden and DHS stated would be offered to GDS? Where is that RFQ and what is happening right now to GDS's space?
Thank you, Gary. I see that, Michael, you still have your hand up. I'm not sure if that's
Yes,
an old
I'd
hand
like to
or-
speak when I have a chance.
Okay, you have your 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, you can see how emotional Gary is. He's got a PhD and he counsels troubled youth. He's actually a very stable level guy. And you also see how much this means to Aisha and how passionate she is about it. It's not because these people get excited easily. It's because what's going on right under our noses here in my community is so crazy. And that's why we really need you to act on this. Whatever you guys decide on this committee, I hope that at the general meeting, you will all stand together and stand behind Ariel. He's the head of the spear going into this. It's very difficult. These people, they deal with influence and political nonsense. What do they have such a problem of oversight? What's the big problem of us as CB12 asking someone to look into what's going on in that building? It's because they want to cover it up. Years ago, after that resolution, there was a visit and they faked a whole bunch of stuff. The room that the guy was living in, they threw a bunch of boxes in there to make it look like storage. They showed the PAL thing downstairs that they put a separate door on so the kids, Black and Hispanic going in and out won't be going out the front entrance where they have the wedding and bar mitzvah people going in and out. And then to try and pretend they were doing youth programs, they took some of those kids upstairs and put them in another room and said, oh, and we're doing this program. But some of the people, including Aisha, realized, hey, I just saw that kid downstairs. They're lying to you, okay? And finally, one of the big problems is, DHS is not handling this. DHS is not made for this. They're supposed to be running homeless shelters and providing services for homeless people. And that is, I don't think anybody can really do that in this city. It's such a mess. I feel sorry for them. Really, it should be maybe another agency like the Department of Youth and Community Development. This is more up their alley. And they can allow DHS to use the portion of the building that serves the homeless people. Hey, that's your section of the building.
That's time.
But that's a big problem. DHS apparently cannot handle this. They're too subject to the political whims of whatever's going on. So that's something for you guys to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, and if you can, Michael, if you could go ahead and put your hand down. Ariel, were you going to come in? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if I might, I just want to try and bring us back in because I want us to get language down. And of course I just want to bring it back eventually to the public, but I'm trying to look for specific language that we want to use for these resolutions. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can focus back on the text as we have before us. All right. So again, this is the language. What I was just doing was inputting the resolve that Aisha had requested here. Community Board 12M calls for a meeting to be held alongside city officials discussing the matter of the Fort Washington Avenue Armory. And then what I've just done is in line with what we were talking about, having the language that was previously used about GDS, just having it moved over into our second document here that's focused on GDS. All right.
Just really, somebody commented saying that one of the public members that wanted to speak hasn't. I believe
Yes.
it's Amanda.
Yes, I saw that, Aisha. And as Ariel said, we're going to come back to the public in a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm writing it down as a list. Yep, thanks.
Okay. So from the top here, we have the language that we've included. I'll just note that in terms of just information that I wanted to have included, and I felt would be very helpful for us, is to have language that's from the charter, because it's specifically outlining what we discussed in our previous meeting, the responsibilities that DHS has to us. And so let me just switch to the proposed language that I was discussing at our past, I think it was the March meeting. So this is just trying to lay out what I had directly said to Leilani, right? That each agency with service districts within our community, they're supposed to prepare annual statements of its service objectives, its priorities, its programs, its activities, so that it kind of lays out what it's supposed to be doing for us, right? What programs, what services is it supposed to be offering? And so those are the things that we would typically expect if we're trying to look at what exactly it's funding. I also want to include language that's from the charter that's also stating that in preparing these statements, they're all supposed to consult with us. They're supposed to speak to us about what exactly it is that they're planning to do with funding. And this is on a regular basis, right? These are annual reports. I also was suggesting that we also include some of these additional whereases here, which are really just going through the bits and pieces, but I think are very important because it's also just lining out that this is supposed to be current information on its operations and programs. It's also supposed to consider the needs of our district, right? When it's trying to allocate the funding per each of the individual like community districts, right? And we're supposed to be consulting with these agencies when we're talking about capital investments. One of the things that I was laying out was that if I went through checkbook, we could find how much money was being doled out directly to the Fort Washington Avenue Armory for capital needs. And so I think that we should be also learning about this, right? The city shouldn't just be doling out our money without us knowing about it. We're also talking about consulting with agencies on the program needs, right? Is it creating a program that we specifically need? One of the questions that I think one of the students that was also alongside GDS was, they were asking about how it is that certain DOE funds that are allocated for programming at the Fort Washington Avenue Armory are coming with essentially constrictions on how they're being used, right? Like you can only use the track if you're a part of a program. And so that's kind of another concern, because if this is supposed to be programs that are supposed to be provided for the public, why do you have to specifically be part of this program that they offer within the Fort Washington Avenue Armory? And so we should be a little bit more aware as to why exactly that is. And of course, we're just supposed to also understand really the quality and the quantity of the services. What are the services that are being offered? Also, just note that in 2800 subdivision E, this is, I think, very important for us because it's stating here, each agency shall furnish promptly to each community board on request any information or assistance necessary for the board work. We've been asking for roughly what is 7 years now, information from DHS. And so it's clearly negating what is a city charter requirement. So this is just language that I think should be included, laying out really what has been the responsibilities of DHS. I know that we're all going to say we've known this, like this is not even a question, but I think it's also very important for us to say for our other fellow community board members that, hey, this is in the city charter. This is what exactly is already owed to us. Does anyone have any thoughts as to whether or not we should have this included?
If I could just jump in, Ariel, I think your observations and your summation of the situation and what many of us have been saying, I would just sum it up in one word as being astute. That hits the nail completely and totally on the head. I agree with that. And in fact, I feel like as far as the question being, why does youth or people's access to the space require that they be involved in this program? But in fact, the license says that they should not be. And in fact, the license seems to read, according to various people's assessment, that they are not allowed to have that kind of exclusivity at the Fort Washington Armory, and the spaces, not only the spaces that they are entitled to according to the license are supposed to be shared with the community, but that the other spaces that they are not entitled to, which are outlined in the license, are supposed to be used by the broader community and not subject to their restrictions.
Okay.
So.
And other fellow committee members? Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to highlight exactly what it is that is supposed to be provided to us. And it's highlighted in the city charter, and we can make the argument that these things have not been provided to us, have not been given to us. I think it's a good piece of information to include in the resolution.
Okay, so, since it sounds like folks are in agreement, I'm just going to have this included as I did in the proposed language there, okay? So you'll see it on the document as so. And then I guess the other additional piece that I also wanted to ask if folks felt comfortable including as well was specifically the information that I also collected from Checkbook NYC, which really lays out that it's getting its contracts from the city of New York. I lay out the individual departments directly, in addition to what are the individual contracts specifically from the Department of Design and Construction, which really dole out large sums there as well.
The second part of what I was going to say was, did we ever get any response from the Department of Homeless Services in regards to the many questions that had been put forth by the board? And I also wanted to add in regards to Sally's comments, that despite her belief that we don't have a responsibility in the issue between what I feel is retaliation against Growth and Development Services and Dr. Gary Altheim, the board in fact has taken a position. So there's precedent about us, about where we stand, right? And it's been general practice when we take a position to support those positions ongoing. And so since we took a position saying he should not be evicted until due process and a proper review, which to this date still hasn't happened because the agency itself hasn't complied, right? We still have questions that are unanswered. And so we already took a position in regards to whether he should be evicted or not. So it's not bad form to reiterate that. And in fact, we could simply refer back to that original resolution stating, whereas we already took a position on that situation. So I just wanted to add that to the context.
So I think just for this resolution that's going to be more so on the oversight, let's try and figure out the language here, and then I'll be happy to just switch on over so that we can get everything for the GDS resolution as well.
Okay, thank you.
But are folks okay then with that language? That's really, again, just laying out the funding that it's receiving.
I'm good with the language.
Okay. All right, so yeah, so those were just the two pieces of information that I wanted to have included. And then we can just continue downward. Again, this just has only had the information that's specific to GDS switched over to the other document there. All right, so it's still including all of the information that we've gone over before. One of the other things I'll just mention for everyone, and happy to just hear your thoughts, is whether or not we would just want to include the wording here, alleged. And that is only because unless we can say that this has been clarified by, let's say, a court, that's what someone has raised, they weren't as you know, assured that this was the correct language to use. And I think we discussed this in a previous meeting as well here. Would everyone be okay to also include alleged or allegedly, and then continue with each one of these here?
Yes, I strongly believe we should be including the word allege, because these are allegations based on what we experience as community members. These are our allegations against an organization, but no formal or proper investigation has been conducted for us to say that these are fact. So I'm a big fan of including the word allegation.
I would also support that, Ariel. Thanks.
Sorry, I just want to jump in here. I want to understand what we're doing right now. Are we stating that we're not clear that they have been, what is it that we're not sure of, or that we're uncomfortable with stating outright? Are we uncomfortable stating that they have been subletting the building? Or are we uncomfortable saying that subletting the building is a breach of the license? Because I'm pretty sure there's no question that they've been subletting the building. We actually have people on record in our own meetings, in the meetings of this very committee, stating as much, specifically Anna Garcia from New York Presbyterian Hospital. But certainly many people in the community have witnessed the building being rented and used. And in fact, the scaffolding of their very building has promotion renting the building. It can be found in Crane's Business Magazine and other publications that they're renting out the building, and it's even stated so on their own website. So why are we not stating it outright? Or are we just not saying that we're not sure it's a breach of the license? And why are we not sure it's a breach of the license if the license specifies exactly the language that forbids such subletting?
Yeah, I think it's again just going back to whether or not someone finds this to be the breaches. Like, as a community board member, should I be the one to say that this was a breach? Like, what is it about that what I'm saying determines it's a breach?
So, yeah.
Like, and I think that that's the only reason why that was raised also, like, as a concern. Like, should community board 12 be saying these are breaches?
So maybe it's, it has been brought to the attention of the committee or the community board that it's hard to say breach the license, because I've never seen a copy of like the sublease. I've never seen, I have a copy of the lease from 2003 that was given to us, but I don't have the most recent copy of the lease. And I also don't have a copy of a sublease. So me as a community board member can't say something has been breached because I don't have that. I haven't seen it. Like,
so FYI, in the process of foiling these documents, not only did we foil it, we refoiled it to make sure that there were no holes, right?
Okay.
To make sure that they weren't going to come back and say, oh yeah, there was this other license we forgot to share with you. So we went back, and I don't know if Phil Zablocki is on the line. He can speak to his efforts in doing so. But I know for a fact that that's what we did, because I instructed everyone on how to do the original set of foils. And when we got that information back, I asked that they double back and cover the bases and make sure that this conversation couldn't happen, because in fact, we've plugged those holes. And what has been stated to us is that there are no new contracts or licenses, and that the ones that we are in possession of are the existing, right? And our understanding has also been that when it's not renewed, that the one that is last done is what remains in force. Now, whether that is proper or proper practice is a different conversation, but that is the information that we were told. But again, the agency is not cooperating per the usual to make it completely clear. But I don't remember if we included the language of the license, which states how the building is not supposed to be sublet, rent, etc., right? And that could certainly be something that we could do in this reso, right? And then include what we are aware of, because this all makes it seem like we're not sure.
Yeah.
But we are sure.
No, like I hear you.
So
for example, encourage the caterer to request a liquor license. I think that can be factually proven that someone came to the licensing committee and requested a license. So that's not an allegation. I think that is like fact.
That's the testimony of the caterer, who was their employee, who was their contractor.
Okay, so I'm happy to just remove alleged on that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through them.
And Ariel, I do see that Marshall has his hand up. Marshall, do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in quick, and I don't know, I make this distinction. When you're using allegedly, to me, it suggests that you're making a criminal accusation. And this document is not necessarily making criminal accusations, so I'm not sure if we need to use allegedly. And I'll land my plane here.
Yeah, no, I could hear, like, I could see why you might think it might run criminal, because quite frankly, we're used to hearing that in court all the time. But no, I think just for the purposes of this resolution, it would just be to say that we've, either been told or we've heard from our community board members that this has happened, or even community members in general have, this has happened.
Yes, but it's not just hearsay. It's evidence from their own websites, their own promotion. It's from the entity itself, including the Department of Homeless Services, has been on record that these things certainly have taken place. They're not without question. There's no question.
I mean,
And because of the history with it, I really would like to not, pull our punches at this late point in the game. We know what we know. We should put that forward to our board. And I feel like adding language that waters it down compromises our position.
no, I mean, I understand what you mean, but are we in the position to say that they've breached it? Like, I think that's the reason why.
I would say yes. I would say we can read, right? And it's not heavy legalese that we're looking at. It's clear language that says, here are the rules, and we can look at the behaviors and the actions and know that they don't line up. It's not that complicated to me. And I feel like this tone is the tone that this board has taken for 7 years. Not one, it's like the Armory Foundation is too big to fail. And as much as we in our community, we are very easy when it is happening outside of our community to point at it and say that that's not okay. It's not okay to say that entities that are violating the public trust are too big to fail, when doing that is going to further compromise the people. We need to be able to take those same positions in our own commission and in our own communities. The Armory Foundation could not be considered too big to fail when all the things that we've already listed out. Top 5 people being paid $1 million, bringing in people from other communities to use the building to the exclusion of people in our own community, paying themselves from monies that are raised, doing actions they're not entitled to do. It's really that simple. We know all these things to be facts, including that a man was sleeping in that bedroom. We have pictures of it inside the space. Like no one doctored a bed inside the office space. We know that the picture is factual. No one has denied it.
Yeah, I don't think we're trying to say the picture you took or Gary took, whatever was taken, like, I don't think that's the case. And like, quite frankly, like, a picture of a bed isn't going to say that someone's living in it. Quite frankly, like, to the rest of the community board members, like, it's a photo of a bed. And that's why, like, I think it's just, like, also, again, giving us that barrier. I really think that, again, like, I don't want this to become like the issue that's raised at the general meeting. That's the only reason why I've just mentioned that as a barrier. But I don't have a really strong feeling on alleged.
Okay, Ariel, this is Etta. I don't know if you could hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. If you don't want to remove allegedly, I think, just by looking at this resolution, all those starting each bullet with the word allegedly maybe does water it down. Maybe another way, just for optic purposes and to kind of give it a little bit more punch, if you wanted to keep the allegedly, you could put, in subsequent years, the Armory Foundation has allegedly, and then each one of the bullet points would start with breach the licensing agreement, breach the, withheld spade, allowed for. So you're not starting each one with allegedly. And so that kind of gives you cover for the entire board if they're concerned about allegedly, but it also doesn't water it down. So it gives it a little more punch. That's just my feedback based on this discussion right now.
Yeah.
I'm willing to second that. Thank you, Etta. I think that's a great idea.
Marshall, is that a new hand or an old hand?
Oh, my bad.
No worries, thanks. Just wanted to check.
Okay. And then just moving on down here, Iron Foundation has been using a website page. I think we've kind of gone over that. I've been utilizing it. And then we're just kind of laying out the language of the articles. Okay. Feel free to just let me know if you want me to slow down. So I think just in the last whereas, there was just a few things that I thought might be helpful to add in. And it's just giving further context at this point. And it's because of our meeting that we then had following the passage of this resolution with Department of Homeless Services, where it's really just showing that they were given the opportunity even years afterwards to then present information and then continue to do the same thing over again. And even after having promised at that meeting that they were going to be presenting that information to me, they still have yet to do so. And so like right now, we're already in May. I think this adds even more context, and like I can just actually switch to this document just so I can pull up the last whereases that we're going to be
Yeah, right there. Second paragraph.
I don't know why I thought I had more. Maybe, oh, that's why it was on this document. Sorry. Yes. So from following this one, because it kind of just gets rewritten a little bit, just to kind of like break it up so that it's also leading to then the next one. These are all the whereases that I pretty much put together. So you're kind of just getting that update there.
Ariel, I think you can condense the resolution that says DHS thereafter returned 2 years later with the following one. And just add an end, just to kind of like just reduce the amount of whereases that we're, because I think that's kind of one and the same.
Sorry, this one and this one here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Drop, yeah.
There's later on shore, stated on return. Oops. Okay. So maybe I can just cut.
Or even, I mean, I don't know what the committee's thoughts on, but even all three of those whereases is pretty much making the same statement. They came back 2 years later after not originally responding. They claimed that they did respond, but asking them to provide the support of that, they did not. You know what I mean? That's just all one statement.
So maybe
Yeah, I think it's that they send SEND.
Did we include here that we had to go as far as vote on a resolution insisting that they comply? Because I think that would also be good context for the, not just us, but for the rest of the board to know how far we've had to go and still they're not complying. So it's not even just a matter of a conversation. We had to vote to insist they comply with the charter, to cooperate with us and provide the information being requested, and still they did not.
Sorry, you wanted to add an additional whereas for what exactly?
For the fact that we voted previously asking them to comply with the spirit of the charter that requires them to participate with us, with CB12, as well as provide information, that that them not answering the questions, not showing up to our meetings were all, against the spirit of that in the charter. We actually have a resolution that was voted on, if I remember correctly, pretty much unanimously by the board.
Okay. I'm trying to think maybe.
I mean, and it's up to you if you feel like it makes this, I know it's a dense resolution. You can bring it up as chair also from the floor, when you're introducing this resolution,
Oh, it's right
if
here.
you like, but I think it can be in the reso either way.
Sorry, this is the last whereas that I just included just to also make clear that we've yet to receive any information requested as required to be shared by the city charter.
Okay.
So technically it's just rewriting of this whereas in the other one, just so I can separate and put in these additional ones talking about our previous meeting.
That whereas on the page, Department of Homeless Services thereafter return 2 years. I'm assuming you're gonna go in there and do some work. It's not reading correctly. So just want to make sure that what you're trying to say gets captured. To state it responded.
Sorry for this, whereas it's highlighted right now?
No, two above that one. That one. It's just not reading right. Whereas the Department of Homeless Services thereafter returned 2 years later on March 4, 2021 to state it responded to the questions previously to the committees, or you can say that to the committee's 27 questions. They'll know, and because the previously just sounds weird there at the end. The state responded to the committee's 27 questions removed previously. And then it stated, the state responded to the committee's 27 questions and was only there to take notes.
I think that should be a quote, if possible. Yeah. So that it's not as if we're making a statement about what we observed, but that in fact, that's what they said they were here to do, which is to take notes.
All right.
Yes, I can just.
Maybe you want to say to state it had already responded to the committee's 27 questions. It had already responded to the committee's 27 questions and only there to take notes. All right. And
I'm just gonna maybe move this then down to the next whereas.
Okay.
I think the committee should also know, I'm sorry, Etta. Matthew Borden, who has been the person that seemed to be lead on this issue, in communicating with the board or not communicating with the board even, recently was no longer listed as being a part of the DHS and now has a new position in government. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what it was. Dr. Gary Altheim may remember what that position is now, but just context for the committee that much of this could be lost in translation on the side of DHS because of the fact that, you know, there's going to be a new person at the helm where this issue is concerned.
I mean, it's probably good to bring up like at the meeting, but for the purpose of, I guess just for the resolution, maybe it wouldn't fit as much here.
No, I don't mean to include it in the reso at all.
I think she was just providing
wanted
some background.
Yeah, I wanted the committee to be aware that there's a changing of the guards for who's been addressing this.
Yeah, I think it's this one that we're switching with this.
Ariel,
We have
just to,
yeah.
the second to last whereas, no, requested. Okay, the chair of the committee requested, maybe you want to say that the department instead of they, that the department or DHS, however you, that the department send SEND the very email with those with the responses to the 27 questions. Send the very email with the responses to the 27 questions. And DHS still did not. Well, no, not, I think you want responses. Did not send. You either respond or did not send the responses, one of the two, to make it grammatically correct.
Okay. So then that should fix all the whereases.
Yeah.
So I know you moved the whereas the one that talked about the chairs pursuing this information over time. I didn't see where you ended up dropping it.
Oh no, I rolled over that one because that one was including the note about the March 7th. Sorry, did you want that one still be kept?
Actually,
let me copy this. Oh, actually, no, was it?
what was the original wording? I know it was about you and I being the chairs that have over time pursued this information.
I'll just try and go back because I can't remember at this point. There you go. I switched it out because it included the information about the pursuing this for 6 years.
Okay. And what does the other one say? I mean, I think that's important information that it's not 6, it's 7.
It's just down here at the bottom.
Actually, no, at this point it's
okay. But is that okay then? I can just
yeah, it's 7 years.
Okay.
Wait, what?
The 7 there.
Yeah, so from the original meeting, it became the one that you just changed and put back because in fact, Community Board 12 has not been pursuing it. It's really only, and it's not exclusion of the committee, you can include that you, I, and the committee members, right? But to say that CB12 has been pursuing this is really an affront to the fact that the opposite has been happening. And in fact, many board members have had an agenda and have intentionally attempted to suppress it. So I don't think that that's accurate or proper.
I changed it to include the committee. Okay. So that should roll out the whereases. To be it resolved, I put in there. What was I at? Yes, that was the city council one. This was for the board of directors. I think you mentioned, Aisha, you weren't as supportive of trying to have like a board of directors. It quite frankly, like, I look at it as a positive, but I mean, I'm not like that tied to it, quite frankly. If that's not something.
No, I'm not against it. I just think that we should, like, I feel like that's a secondary step to the board having a public discussion about what our expectations of said task force would be. But also, I wanted to, and I'm trying to look at what the language looks like now, but that it should not just be 1 or 2 members of Community Board 12. It should be members of the committees that are in purviews that are specific to this type of matter, whether it be the aging, youth and education, housing and human services, health and environment, having those members be represented on that task force. There was conversation about whether they are hand selected by the chair, which at this point would be Eleazar Bueno. But the bylaws for CB12 actually state that it is the executive committee that then deliberates and then empowers the chair to make said appointments according to that body's opinion on who should serve on those in that task force, right? But not just that we create the task force, but that we say to the task force what we see as just and proper, where that facility and its services and the outcomes that we expect are concerned.
So I just want to make note. So it's going to be more so about the advice and consent of the, and let me just pull it up. Yeah. So under the duty of the person.
I think I had sent it to Mari. I got a new phone and I've had issues porting my old stuff onto the new phone. It's something that I'm still working on. My phone's been ringing, but it's not doing a lot of stuff that it should be doing. So I can't go back to where I've sent that to Marielle, but if you have that, the text message where I found, oh, did you find the language? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's the
bylaws
reason why, just to note for everyone on the committee. So I was just discussing with other board members that this was part of the other issue with the bylaws, that it essentially establishes the powers of appointment to that which is the chairperson.
But that's for committees. There's language specific to bodies that exist outside of the board.
And this is also in reference to the liaison officers.
Right, with the approval of the executive committee.
Yeah.
When the board deems such action appropriate to coordinate with the board of the activities of any body in the community District 12 at the request of such body. So that is the language that would be relevant.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I had to mention a concern about the appointment. So it technically, like, it wouldn't be the full board. It's like it has to be an appointment of a liaison with the approval of the executive committee by the board chair.
Yes.
So it's kind of like its own version of advice and consent. Uh,
Yes.
okay, so where was I with the language?
And Aisha, I was just looking in my phone. I was able to find that text message, which is that you did share with me. So thank
So
you.
it sounds like you said it's going to be 3 representatives. And I can just put the parentheses with the approval.
I think it was more than 3.
Was
Eight.
it? Sorry.
And this is, I'm assuming aging, youth and education, housing and human services, health and environment. I'm trying to think of what are there, that's 4, but does anybody think any other committees on the board have a stake in how the building, I mean, even business development, because there's no requirement that the building solely be used for youth activities or even aging activities. It's something that certainly could be used by the business community for activities.
I mean, I
So
could see the reason why to have like appointments from those committees, but it's also like who would be willing to. And I think putting like a lot more is a very like kind of strenuous role that we're asking people to play as well. So I mean, I would just caution against putting like a lot more. Because, you know, this is probably going to be like, yeah, folks that are usually an executive, but
no, I think so. For instance, with the Inwood rezoning, when we were advised as chairs to appoint people to the Inwood rezoning committee, it wasn't going to be the chair themselves, but a member of the committee that could go and bring back that information to the committee. So it's kind of like sharing the load across the board and not adding more on to the executive committee that already have, you know, a weight of responsibilities.
right. But who from the committees are going to go?
I mean, well, that's something for a future discussion. And the board is always in flux as far as who the members are. But I think the point that I'm making is that those are the committees that have a stake in what's happening in that building. So for instance, the aging committee, there was previously the geriatric center had a walking program, which the Armory Foundation raised the rent. $15,000 they attempted to charge them to allow seniors to just walk around the track for their own safety and during inclement weather, and they couldn't afford it and they were X'd out of the Armory. So that's why I feel like the aging committee should definitely have a stake, because the aging community, or seniors in our district rather, could definitely benefit from the use of the space that they've been prohibited from having. Same thing, youth and ed, housing, clearly it's our purview because DHS has been attached to it this entire time. And there's also a shelter that still exists in that building. So it's definitely our purview.
Yeah.
Parks and cultural affairs, definitely. So that actually adds to the 4, that's 5. And so that's my justification for why I think there should be appointees from each of those committees.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree on that. It's just more so about who's going to be able to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for a future concern. I think it's worth it. I think a 2-acre building that has the capacity that it has, that could be serving hundreds of thousands of people, is worth some people from our board, specifically the ones in the purviews, to be able to participate in. And you know what? That's another decision that can be made down the line, whether it's going to be meeting monthly, every 3 months, or whatever it is, or whether, however we deem it to be. I think that it's worth it to have participation and information that's shared. Like, for instance, we know that the agency has been supposed to provide the information that they've been supposed to provide and have not. And those people are some of the one, I mean, the board itself should always be informed, but specific people to be on the forefront for that. I would certainly volunteer for that. Clearly, I've already volunteered for 7 years.
Okay. Do other community members have thoughts on this as well? As to maybe there should be a number or specific designation amongst committee members? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a heavy thing to put. And the only reason why I'm, again, just suggesting maybe not requiring a high number is because then that means vacancies, and that means people not participating that could be. So, you know, that's just my concern. It's not really a big issue, but I've just known working with boards and commissions, that's a concern that comes up a lot. And it affects the really the quorum, but also the ability of the board to do its work.
I definitely, that's not lost on me. I also wanted to add that specifically where the Inwood rezoning was concerned, that community stakeholders were also a part of the ask. Whereas Northern Manhattan, it's getting late and I'm tired and I haven't eaten all day. So I'm forgetting the complete acronym of the organization, but various organizations that were involved in the Inwood rezoning fight were also to be included. All of those stakeholders were given the opportunity, even though they're not on the board, that they also have the opportunity to participate in that. And I think that should also be included.
Okay, so I've gone ahead and just changed it now to 5.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think that should be good there. I guess just the language here about no less than 3 independent community board members. Again, that's one of the issues that we raised last time about who's exactly going to be appointing them. That's unclear by not stating who there. But I'm happy to just leave it if folks want. Quite frankly, that's just a thought that came to mind. And also, you know, we're not going to be able to do majority vote. So that's just something to also keep in mind.
Did we look at other similar type of bodies when we decided on the composition of what this one would look like?
No, I didn't make recommendations, but do you want me to just suggest a few and we can look at them right now?
No. I didn't have anything in mind. I was just wondering, I guess, how we came to this list of, individuals to be appointed.
I mean, what I will say is that, like, when we look at examples of the park corporations, the Navy Yard Development Corporation, things like them, they usually will have appointments of elected officials. And so that's kind of where my thinking came from. Oh, I'm getting so many emails now. But yeah, so that was just the way I was looking at this. And then also having even a representative from Community Board 12 being present as well.
And again, having a public hearing and that language being in the reso could be a part of that process, figuring out what this body specifically is going to entail, what type of oversight, and specifically, the facility itself, how we expect it to be run and what kind of outcomes we're looking for can be a part of that.
So I'm just going to remove this because, again, we can't have the language here that's highlighted for the majority vote. And again, just ask, how does everyone feel about the 3 independent community members? Do folks want it?
I like the idea of having independent community members.
Okay.
I don't know how many, but I do like that.
Okay. And how would we seek to appoint?
Mm,
That's the tricky part.
That is certainly the tricky part. I would
Yeah.
say.
I mean, is it through like, an application process? Is it, would it be the committees that recommend these individuals and then kind of approval by the executive committee afterwards? I'm just kind of throwing out some ideas. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what that could look like.
So it sounds like individuals that may be voted upon by the current committee members. Does that-
Exactly. Yeah, or maybe like we would put them forward as a nomination to say, oh, well, we would like to nominate X individual or this individual.
Ariel, why couldn't we use the other language that you had in there that talked about a majority vote from the committee?
Oh, because it cannot come from the entire board. So like appointments by the board has to be done in line with what we put here for
with the bylaws.
with the community board chair and the approval of the executive committee.
Okay.
So I mean, we're going to be making what would be 5 appointments.
Mhm.
And I mean, if you want to make it consistent with what we're doing for our community board representatives, we could, but that just means that we're also then appointing 3 additional members.
Yeah, because right now it says 5 representatives appointed by Community Board 12. That could be read as anybody that the chair wants to appoint. I don't know if we want it to be 5 community board members appointed, because I interpret that as whoever the chair wants to go ahead and appoint.
Yeah, I think we need to specify the purviews. Those from those specific purviews.
Yeah.
So that should just outline it there. From community board 12 members appointed by community board 12 chair with the approval of the executive committee. And then if you'd like, I can do the same, but just not putting community board 12.
Yeah. I think that works.
Can we include a nomination process for other community members to be decided at the public hearing so that maybe we could sit on it? Like we know that it's work that needs to be done, but we don't have to make that decision tonight, but that at this public hearing, which we plan to have, that then we can figure out what that nomination process would look like. But we just know from this resolution, there's definitely going to be a nomination process.
Nomination process here. I can just write that in. So I'll just do that there. Appointed by,
Debbie actually made a comment in the chat, and I was definitely thinking about NAB. Remind me what the acronym means. Neighborhood,
The Neighborhood Advisory Board.
Neighborhood Advisory Board, maybe partnering with NAB in, including them in some of the stakeholders.
So
I don't
maybe
know.
changing this to be 3 neighborhood advisory board members.
I mean, I don't think it should be to the exclusion of people that don't hold some kind of official office. And that's the other thing. I'm assuming that the guidelines require this to be open meetings as well. Is that correct?
I mean,
Or would we have to specify that?
no, with any board, it has to be under that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, maybe we can say something like 3 independent community members, including 1 member of NAB, for instance, to say like a minimum, at least 1 person needs to be a NAB representative. That could be an option.
I like that idea.
Okay. So that should then be everything. And I'm happy to just switch over now to then what would be GDS. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. So again, this has the language that we just pulled. And I'm happy to just let folks read through with it. I think just for the purposes of getting directly to it, I can just
I think there's a board member. I mean, I'm sure you guys are paying attention to this, but just in case someone, a board member is in the queue seemingly that wants to be moved over to panelists.
sorry, let me stop.
Yeah, we just put your name right now. Your name says event. You could just name yourself. That'd be helpful. Thanks.
Sorry, someone had their hand raised from.
Hi, Tanya. Yeah, just rename yourself to Tanya. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes, Ariel, if you could just promote Tanya, although her name, she's listed as event.
Oh, okay, there we go. Sorry. Okay. Tanya, you there? Tanya?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that event.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
David Allen seems like he may also want to participate in the conversation.
Sorry, David is part of our board.
I'm not sure, but even if he's a community member,
Yeah, I just wanted to try and get us to get the language down, and then of course just gonna open it up for everyone. Okay. So let me just go back to sharing the screen just in case. And then, yeah, did anyone have any suggested edits for this? And I think I've shared, yeah, I've shared with everyone. So you should be able to also look at it directly if you want. I think, Aisha, you mentioned previously that you want to include the resolution that was passed in 2019.
yes, as precedent.
Okay. And I apologize, I'm gonna have to look back because I don't remember when we passed that. It seems to be a while ago. Yeah, I have to try and remember. Oh wait, no. Where is our resos? I'm trying to remember right now. It is. If anyone remembers exactly where we have these listed, feel free to just tell me because I am not going to remember off the top of my head.
What are you looking for? I'm sorry, I missed.
Oh, the reso from.
Oh, the reso.
Actually, it was 2019.
We stated it in a previous meeting. I believe it was March 2019. Dr. Gary probably knows it if he's in the comments.
Let me just make sure.
And I think Deb.
Oh.
Yeah, I think to everybody in the chat, I think Ariel is trying to finish out the committee's work first, and then he's going to refer to people that want to participate in the conversation. So.
Yeah, January 22nd, 2019. We passed this resolution.
Okay.
Actually, back to this.
Okay, Deb.
I just want to make sure I got the exact language down. Okay. Okay. Was there anything else I think that I might have missed, Aisha? Or quite frankly, any of the committee members?
Not that I can actually zoom in. I didn't know I could do that. Nice. Okay. Yeah, because it's very small on my screen. I'm actually looking on my cell phone right now, which shockingly works quite well. but and everything that I could see, it seems like it's a good overview of the matter. Of course, reserving if I feel that something is missing, I can always add that from the floor, but it looks like this definitely is an overview of the history of what, the actions where GDS are concerned.
Yeah. All right. So if there's no other suggested edits, I'll then open it on up to our fellow committee members. Or sorry, public members.
Great, thanks, Ariel. So we first have Amanda up on the list, and Amanda, you have 2 minutes. I'm just going to turn my camera on. Amanda, if you could be given speaking privileges.
Hello?
Yep.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the space. I know it's late. So I worked in the community in the Bronx. I'm a community organizer. I've been working with Dr. Gary, doing some outreach for GDS. And I just really want to touch home on the issue of space in these communities, period. I think that for decades, we've been getting swept over by, the big bullies, the city and the state. And I think that it's, the community's time now more than ever to really hone in on community ownership. I don't think that a lot of the community members know that their tax dollars are being taken and used for other things, and all of this could be pulled in to the armory. We had a gentleman speaking about him using the track, being part of a sports team, but those same opportunities wasn't offered to folks in that neighborhood. So my request for the space is that it remain a community space and that we can actually do the real community teaching that needs to happen, so that way we don't get swept when big things come, like the rezoning issues around gentrification. I think that this community board has a lot of opportunity to build some ground with this space. And I think it's super unfair that, you have different type of students creating this sort of ism between, folks who still need a fighting chance to reach their potential. So it really isn't the students' fault who, had the opportunity, were given the privileges. But I would also like to see this community come up and take ownership of that, instead of letting it be used for, housing, when this can be really used for the services that Dr. Gary provides through GDS.
Thank you, Amanda.
I want to thank you for the time. I do think that this should be a continuing conversation, and we should definitely be talking to faith-based organizations and folks that are already mobilizing around issues of housing, domestic violence, and youth-based issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I have Deborah on my list. Deborah, I'm not sure if you still wanted to make a comment. You're next, in case you're. One second also.
Hi, everybody.
Go ahead. Hi.
It's been a long road here, and I will say again, because I have no idea who the audience is listening in, but I'm a public school teacher, 25 years, and the last 4 years that Coogan's was involved with the fundraiser for the Hall of Fame for track and field, promises were made to do stuff for the kids. And that's not talking about one little day of everybody getting little medals and things like that. I was ready to get in there and start a middle school program. I used to work for this district. I left because the wheels always stop spinning for some reason. And it's interesting because I work in the other half of Councilman Levine's district, and it's like night and day. And I don't understand if we were to compare, for instance, the space out either in Staten Island or Brooklyn, where you have this large facility that is shared space. Our elderly, of which we have a huge and growing population, continues to be underserved. And no one has talked about what Gary has been doing with that. And it is on record because my school, Booker T. Washington, MS 54 in District 6, participated in a concert supporting the Alzheimer's program at Riverstone, at 99 Fort Washington, which under our noses is slowly being privatized. And I seem to think that our community boards have forgotten that you are supposed to be the voice and the advocates for those that don't get to have that voice.
Deborah, that's
In the
fine. If we
20,
can just
yes, ma'am. And in the
wrap up.
25 years of teaching, I've watched this district plummet because we're ripping our kids off. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Michael was also raised his hand to speak, but it doesn't look like Michael's still on. Okay. So I'm going to move on to David. Go ahead. You also have 2 minutes. David? If we could just give David speaking privileges.
Okay, sorry,
Ah,
David.
there you go.
Click it now.
David.
Okay.
There you
can
go.
hear
Go
me,
ahead.
right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So first, I just want to say, no community could survive without volunteers, without people like yourselves who, tonight I was out for dinner with my wife before I did this, and Ariel's there coughing all night, somewhat painfully, it seems, but he's here. And all of you are here to volunteer. And I think that, that really needs to be recognized. No community can thrive without it. For me, I think about, what makes me want to volunteer? Why am I here? I'm passionate about mental health services. I'm passionate about equal access to mental health services. And it is, I don't know if people who don't suffer from some level of mental health issue as I have, and the people in my family understand how hard it is to ask for help. And even when the help is readily available, somebody is not willing to go and search for the help. And at a time like this, this free quality mental health services that GDS offers for 24 years is being obstructed to the most vulnerable people. And it concerns me, I as volunteers, where something like this isn't the clearest, highest priority to protect this community and the youth in this community. I have nothing else to say other than, to me, it would be the biggest priority. And whatever their politics of it should be secondary. And sometimes doing the right thing is uncomfortable and hard and seemingly impossible, but the right thing is clear.
Thank you, David. And I'll just ask if you've already spoken, if you can just lower your hand. So Amanda, if you wouldn't mind lowering your hand and name the same. Thank you. Okay, so next up I have Dr. Gary. Let us know when you're ready.
Yes. Hello.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I was hoping that I could get an answer to the question. I've asked 3 questions. I'm going to ask them again. So the question I have is, the Armory Foundation had an opportunity to send a document which they referred to as the Armory Foundation rebuttal to community board, 12 members before the general meeting. We put together a document responding to those false statements. And I would like to know if you were going to forward that for the same fairness, because we put together the document. So are you going to forward that to CB12 so they could see the facts? Because if anybody read that document, I believe it would be very hard to ask the kinds of questions that Sally is asking, which are totally ludicrous. So that's one question I have, is can that be forwarded? And the other question I have again is that it was stated at March 17th on 2019 on audio recording and video recording that we have, that DHS stated that they were going to revamp the building and that GDS's space, they would have an opportunity to bid for their own space. Okay, so I'd like to know, has there been any RFQ for GDS's space? That's a question. And the last question is can CB12, because it was stated that GDS's space would not be given to anyone else at the meeting at CB12, can you do a tour to see what happened to our space that we built out from rubble, built for
10
private space
seconds.
to provide Sally, mental health services, intergenerational programs, youth advocacy programs to hundreds and thousands, and those documents have been submitted to CB12.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. Ariel? And then I know after Dr. Gary, we also have Phil. And then it looks like Sally would like to say something.
Yeah, so Gary, the documents, they've been sent, and they've been resent. And like what I was mentioning in our past general meeting was that both myself and also Maria, like we were reaching out to folks trying to confirm, like, hey, did you get the email? Did you get the email? And when we did, we spoke to folks and we confirmed that yes, they got the email. So it's like, it's not a question, and that's the reason why, like, I keep trying to say this to the board members when they keep saying like they didn't get the email. I don't even want to go back and forth at this point because
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know if the whole community board 12, the 50 members are going to be sent the same information that the Armory Foundation had an opportunity to send. That's all I was asking.
Yeah, they've gotten they've gotten it.
Thank you.
And then in regards to, sorry, I'm trying to remember everything, but
the RFQ,
was
RFQ for our space.
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions that was raised at the meeting, and so we're really just again continuing to await their responses. And so
so are you aware of any RFQ that's been put forth for our space? Are you aware of any?
I don't get anything from DHS, and as soon as even if I'm told like they're going to show up to the meeting, that's like as soon as I'll tell folks. But I haven't gotten anything.
And
Nothing.
do you know does CB12 know what right now is happening to our space? Who is in our space?
I think just from what you told me that there was I think it was the union at the time that was in there, but
No, 1199 is in Jack's room. Jack's room, the one that we uncovered, that Jack was sleeping in the building, that is being taken over by 1199 without a license, and Columbia program is next door to that. But I'm asking about our specific space.
No,
Okay,
I haven't.
thank you.
I haven't gone. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. Thank you, Ariel. Phil. Just if we can promote Phil.
Oh, if I could just jump in here really quick. One of the things that Sally was saying is that she felt she didn't know growth and development services. So I also wanted to put on record in this meeting that I've observed over the 7 years, growth and development services attempting to forward information to our board, to our members, and to the public the same way other organizations do, attempting to have it put on the Facebook. Now, in all due honesty, I was the administrator for I'm still the administrator for the primary Facebook page that was created, which now has been replaced by one that serves way less people in our community. I could have just taken over and decided that I wanted to post on behalf of GDS because I felt that it was unfair the way in which they were excluded. I was attempting to color within the lines and do things according to proper process and never did that, but watched while Armory Foundation or New York Presbyterian or Columbia University instantly on the last minute or with preparation are allowed to forward their information, and they would not allow Growth and Development Services to do that. Even when Growth and Development Services were awarded the Changemaker Awards and wanted the community to be aware of that, they did not push that information out either. So it is actually our own fault why people on our board feel like they don't know GDS, not due to their lack of trying.
Thank you, Aisha. Phil, do you have speaking privileges? Just want to make sure we finish getting to the public members.
Phil. Okay, Phil,
There you go.
I've got you
All
there.
right, can you folks hear me now?
Yes.
You good? All right.
Go
Hey,
ahead.
good evening, everybody. Just a quick thank you to all for all this work you've been done. It's been a long and hard battle to say the least. Just wanted to go on the record for some lack of dialogue again with DHS. After that meeting on March 4th, where Leilani Irvin was present, and she had promised, to do certain things. I had emailed her and I CC'd Ariel on there with 3 questions, which was, why was GDS evicted from the Fort Washington Armory? What is GDS's former space at the Fort Washington Armory being used for now? And is DHS going to reinstate GDS into the Fort Washington Armory? And I've never received a response. And I have pinged her back a couple of times, as Ariel has seen. And unfortunately, in the tradition of how DHS has done things, they just do not respond. So I just wanted to go on the record with that. Just want to urge everyone here to vote yes to both the resolutions you have going on tonight, all this great work. And it sounds like you already sent the information to the folks that will be part of the general meeting, but I just wanted to state how important it is in preparation for the general meeting that all committee board members be given the facts to review before the date of the general meeting. I and others don't have the contact information for all the committee board members to send them stuff regarding this resolution. So I just kindly ask, as a friendly reminder, that all the documented facts that you have in your hands be sent to all of them, to give them the opportunity to see the tons of information, as you've all learned, that we have on this. It's been very well documented over the last 7 years. And then if you feel that there's anything that's missing, feel free to reach out to me. I have a copy of everything, and I'd be happy to speak to anyone personally that has any questions. So with that, I turn it back over. I thank you all, and I'll leave it as that.
Thank you, Phil. And David, I'm assuming that's an old hand, correct?
Yes.
We could just look. Okay, thank you. Ariel, over to you. It looks like on our side, it's just Sally that has her hand up. Over to you first. Go ahead.
Okay. So I guess with that, it leaves us with our 2 resolutions, and I'll just share the screen just out of formality here as I'm referring to each.
And I did have a question, Ariel.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you were just in the other meeting and doing the work.
No, we finished our meeting, which is why I missed part of this one and most of the chat. I just wanted to thank Phil. It would be extremely helpful to the community board members that aren't on this committee to get all the back documents. I especially look forward to reading the rebuttal. Some of this I have not seen. Y'all might have had it. I also wanted to thank David for his comments. I wanted to respond specifically to Dr. Gary's comment. The data I'd asked for was just information on utilization. I'm not sure why that would be irrelevant or ridiculous or whatever you called it. And Deborah Cardona, no, I don't work for the Parks Department. In fact, my professional work is in mental health. So with that said, I just want more facts and more data. And to the extent, Phil, that you have that would be extremely helpful, because I think that there are many members that have heard from GDS, but what we hear in the public session of the community board by by the fact that it's limited to 2 minutes, which I don't necessarily agree with, we aren't getting, there's not time for a member during the public session to actually provide the information that I'm looking for. So anyway, I appreciate all the work that you do, and I want to emphasize to anyone on the board that doesn't understand this, because of the pandemic, the need for mental health services has skyrocketed. That's the next crisis we'll face. And so I think these kinds of services are critical. Anyway, I will now stop.
No, I completely understand. I'm actually going to connect right now so that no one can ever say I didn't do it. But I'm gonna
And
connect.
if I could jump in here while you transition, I just wanted to say thank you. First of all, to Ariel for picking up this charge, for your due diligence, for your adeptness at the work that you do, for your astute observations, for your knowledge of the way our city functions and bringing that into this process, for engaging community members and board members where this issue is concerned. Thank you, Marielle, as assistant chair, for supporting and jumping in as a new person on this board, jumping in and being actively engaged and doing the same and supporting Ariel in his work. I want to thank all of the board members that have participated in this process, that have come to the committee, that have asked the questions, including Sally that's here and has been here. I've seen her jump in on other committee meetings as well. It's been a long process and it's not been easy. And I'm glad that we're reaching a point where hopefully we bring change so that the ways in which this situation has been toxic for many people that have only wanted the best for our community will not ever have to be subjected to that again. And we can get the resources and the services and the outcomes that could be yielded specific to this facility, but also it could be an example for other situations in the community. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
So I guess if I'm not seeing hands, and I apologize because I'm on shared screen, I would like to call for a motion on this resolution here, the Fort Washington Avenue Armory, as it's just dubbed on this Google Doc. I'd like to motion for really the passage of the resolution. Can I get a second?
Second.
And are there any questions to the resolution?
And this is the first one about the oversight? Or is this did we vote on that other one already? Or is this the one about Dr. Gary?
No, we haven't voted on either.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, this would be on the Fort Washington Avenue Armory.
Okay.
The oversight specifically. So hearing no objections, this is considered passed unanimously. Now I will switch over to what would be the GDS resolution.
Ariel, can I ask one question? That's passed unanimously by the committee?
Yes.
Because since I haven't had a chance to read it, I'm going to have to abstain from both if you're calling for other community board members.
Oh, this was just calling for the committee. I
Okay,
mean,
great.
if there's no objections, then there isn't a need for a vote. Okay. So yeah, so now I switched the screen over to the GDS resolution that we were discussing. And I'd like to call for a motion to pass the GDS resolution.
I second it.
Okay. And is there any objections to the resolution or passing the resolution?
I abstain.
Okay. Is there any objection?
I don't have an objection, but I'm also abstaining.
Oh, okay. Unless there's an objection, this technically doesn't go for a vote. So I just wanted to make clear. If there is no objection, then the resolution passes.
Wait, I'm confused by that.
So if you are objecting to a motion to pass the resolution, then that's when it would go to a vote. Otherwise, I can motion it. And if I'm asking if there is any objection, and there's no objection, then it would pass. If there's a desire to object, then I can just take it to the vote.
I'm not sure how abstentions impact that.
Yeah, the abstention in this portion, but by me asking if there's any objection, it wouldn't account for that.
Yeah, so I don't think, like, for example, I don't think I am objecting to it coming to the floor for a vote, but then are we voting on it afterwards?
No, because it's the objection that would then cause us to get the vote. Originally, I hadn't been really just motioning to pass the resolution and just taking it directly to the vote. But I figure that there hasn't necessarily been a desire for an objection. And so that's why I've just made it very quick and simple. Is there an objection? If not, then this resolution would pass unanimously. Does that make sense to folks?
That's the part I don't understand, because you're saying that it passes unanimously, but if you have people that want to abstain, then why are we saying it's unanimous?
Because unless there's an objection, you can't abstain, and that's not, and so abstaining is your own vote. So I think to make things clearer, what I'll say is I'll motion to call to vote. Okay.
Yeah, I think that might make things a little clearer.
Okay. But this just to be clear here, this would be for the GDS resolution. For the first resolution that already passed, that's done through. All right. So now for the second one, I'd like to motion to call to vote. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. So let me just take down folks' information. And actually, let me just stop sharing so I can just see who I have on the panelists. Okay, so I'll start with Angel. You said you abstain, or is that?
Abstain.
Okay. Mariel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bruce, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Okay. Ada, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Why are you even here?
Make sure I'm not missing. Aisha, how do you vote?
She votes yes.
I think she dropped out. She was probably having some connection issues. So maybe come back to her, because I don't see her right now.
Okay. Okay, and then I'll just vote in favor. Yes. And then I'll ask fellow community board members. Sally, how do you vote?
I'm going to have to abstain because I haven't had a chance to read it. So, but I'll have a chance before the general meeting. And thank you for connecting me with Dr. Gary and Phil.
Absolutely. Okay. Tanya, how do you vote?
Sorry, I read through it. Yes.
Okay. All right. So with, I mean, I don't know if I should maybe wait for Aisha, but essentially the resolution would pass as is. She's here.
Doesn't Marshall
Did
get
we
to
get
vote on
Marshall's
this?
vote? Yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna
sorry,
say Marshall.
Yeah, I don't know if she's gonna be joining.
His
Okay.
vote counts in committee, not in general necessarily.
Yeah. Marshall, sorry. How do you vote?
I vote in favor.
Okay. Thank you, Marshall.
And it looks like Aisha's just come back on as well.
Okay. Aisha, are you there?
Hi, yeah, I think it dropped off because being that the car wasn't moving, it wasn't really charging my phone. So I'm here.
Okay. On the GDS resolution, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
So within committee, that's 3 yeses and 3 abstentions, and this therefore passes with 1 yes as well from our public member, and 2, or rather 1 abstention from one of our fellow member community board members, and 1 yes from a fellow community board member. Sorry, Deborah, I see your comment. My coughs are stopping me, but I'm happy to just ask the public. How do you vote? I guess I'll start with David Allen. How do you vote?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll help you out, Ariel. Deborah, how do you vote? Deborah, I don't hear you. If we can type it in the chat.
Yes. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. For coughing.
Dr. Gary?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes, sorry.
I'm trying to make sure. Akeem, I believe, on the Galaxy. How do you vote? Okay, I think we'll come back. How do you vote, Akeem?
Akeem votes
Okay.
yes. If I can vote for him, he's.
I'll need to hear from him.
Yeah, you have to be able to localize it.
Yes.
Okay, now we heard you. Thank you.
Put it in writing.
And I'm so sorry. What is your last name? Just so I'm also noting it for our records. Our
Marino, Marino.
Okay. Okay.
Phil, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Rose? Looks like Rose is not connected to audio, but Rose has put in the chat yes.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just allowed to talk.
Awesome.
Now. Rose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if we can give permission to Stephanie and Zadie as well, so that we can capture their votes. Stephanie, how do you vote?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. And Zadie.
Yes, I also vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. That's everyone. Ariel.
Okay. All right. So that should then conclude then our business regarding the Fort Washington Avenue Armory. With that, I'm happy to move us down to old business, if there's any old business. Sally, are you raising your hand in this regard?
Oh, no, sorry. I forgot to put it down.
Okay. Seeing no hands amongst panelists or attendees. Any new business? I'm seeing a hand from, sorry, Gary, yes?
Yes. I just want to invite everyone to our mental health awareness event. We have an event on May 19th, which is 5:30. We'll forward it to the community board and forward it to everyone. It's an emotional support in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. and the mental health services that we've been providing for 24 years and to offer support to our community. That's it.
Thanks, Gary. Okay. And seeing no other hands, I guess that should conclude then our new business. Leaving us with nothing else on our agenda. I'm happy to call for a motion to end the meeting. Can I get a second?
I second that.
Okay, thank you so very much, Lita. All right, I guess this is our conclusion now. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night. And yeah.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Feel better.
Thank you so much.
Yes, feel better at the end.
Yeah, feel better.
Ariel, I have a question. Now that we're on Zoom, it came up during the health and environment. Now that we're on Zoom, maybe we could schedule these meetings so they don't collide, because I'd really like to attend this one more, but having it on the same night as health and environment makes it hard.
I second that, Sally.
I mean, we could, yeah, we could maybe ask for the future calendars to just go
Yep.
set up differently, but
Yeah, these are like the two most important community board meetings, and it's really frustrating that they're at the same time.
okay. I'll definitely raise it, if anything, for the executive as well.
Great.
Well, have a great night and take care.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.